Why do you get insomnia when you quit smoking? Well, we actually know why, and we know exactly what to do about it. Here is the simplest answer. The reason people struggle to sleep after quitting smoking is because of the fluctuations in the levels of certain neurotransmitters caused by nicotine stimulation. What does that mean? Tobacco is a stimulant, and it has a massive effect on your brain in multiple ways. To really understand the science of insomnia when quitting smoking requires a dive into the science of your brain. It's a worthwhile trip because when you understand the science, guess what? You can use that knowledge to hack your brain and beat insomnia and stay quit. So let's dig a little bit deeper into your brain here. We need to look at three things. One, the effects of smoking on your brain. Two, the effects of nicotine on your central nervous system. And three, what happens when you quit and throw a monkey wrench into the biochemistry of your brain by quitting smoking. Part one, your brain on nicotine. When you first started smoking, you had a certain brain chemistry and a specific type of sleep. Now you start smoking, you're permanently altering your brain's chemistry by setting a new normal in your brain. Here is the effect of that new normal. You will have a reduced total sleep time, difficulty initiating sleep, more fragmented sleep, and more light sleep than a non-smoker when you start smoking. Meaning when you started smoking, you created new sleep issues that you didn't have before, but it happens slowly and over time, so you don't notice it. Think of putting a frog in cold water and slowly turning up the heat. The frog won't notice and they won't jump out of the water. That is what happens when you start smoking. What that means is what you think is your normal sleep as a smoker actually is not your normal sleep. It's actually a sleep issue. That is your brain on nicotine. It creates a new normal about sleep that is not actually normal. But to really understand this, we have to dig even deeper. Two, let's look at how nicotine exerts its effects on the central nervous system. Nicotine works by the activation of nicotine acetylcholine receptors, which leads to the release of neurotransmitters. For example, dopamine, acetylcholine, and serotonin. But for sleep, we really mostly want to look at the dopamine as it plays a huge role in regulating sleep. These neurotransmitters participate in regulating your sleep and wake cycle. You start smoking and you start to regulate these chemicals in your brain, both in amounts of the chemicals, in the duration that those chemicals are in your brain, and the frequency with which they're getting into your brain. This is becoming your new normal when you started smoking. Basically, you created a new biochemical balance in your brain with the steady release of these chemicals every time you took a puff, especially dopamine. Think about that. When you smoke a pack a day regularly, year over year, you are basically creating a new normal biochemical environment in your brain, which is not natural, but induced by your smoking. This new artificial environment regulates sleep, but not in a good way. Now let's look at the third piece to this puzzle. Exactly what happens when you quit. You quit, the first thing that happens is you disrupt your brain biochemistry. You take your new normal and you flip it on its head. You have a regular release of these chemicals, dopamine in particular, which helps regulate sleep. You go from regular dopamine day in and day out, hour in and hour out, and all of a sudden you put an end to that. Guess what you now have in your brain? A complete lack of dopamine and its effects on your brain chemistry. You have what we call in neuroscience a dopaminergic deficit. Guess what your brain needs dopamine for? Dopamine is an important regulator of sleep and wakefulness. Now you no longer have a regular supply of dopamine. Guess what happens when you remove from your brain chemistry a chemical whose job it is to play a role in regulating sleep? You get sleep issues, or more accurately, worse sleep issues than you already had. But it's actually even worse than that. Guess what happens when you fail at quitting? You pick up the cigarette and your sleeping improves. This reinforces the smoking because you get a better sleep because you think, man, I have to keep smoking because it helps me sleep. The real issue is that this is a false belief. It is true only compared to the first 24 to 90 days of quitting smoking. You see, if you stay quit long enough, your brain will reset back to before you smoked, back to when you had the best sleep. You see, smoking caused you to have worse sleep, and that worse sleep became your new normal. Then you quit. and you falsely think this is horrible, the sleep is worse. Man, my sleep was so much better when I smoked. So what does the science say? It says your best sleep was before you smoked. Then you smoked and created a new normal, a worse sleep, for a sleep that was worse than before you smoked, and now you quit. And it gets worse, but only for a limited time, and you will return to your natural and better sleep if your brain is given enough time to adjust to its natural state before you smoke. So here we are. We now know that when we quit, we get sleeping issues, and we know why. So what can be done? Now that we know why we have insomnia and sleeping issues, we can use this knowledge to start to hack our sleep and get through this temporary period faster and with better sleep. So it doesn't take a year. Who wants that? I will show you some practical things you can actually do to beat the insomnia and get a better night's sleep when you quit smoking. Just watch these videos here, and I'll see you in the next video.